I stood in the boardroom of the company I'd helped build from nothing, watching my co-founder and boyfriend slide a piece of paper across the polished oak table toward me. The late afternoon sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the conference room that still smelled of new furniture and ambition. "It's over, Lena," Jason said, his voice cold and businesslike. Not the voice of the man I'd spent 2 years building a life and a company with. This was someone else entirely. I stared at him, confused, my brain refusing to process what was happening. "What are you talking about?" The 3 investors sitting beside him shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, but none of them met my eyes. Jason leaned back, loosening his tie slightly. "You're out. Effective immediately." My hands trembled as I picked up the paper. Termination of partnership. My name, my signature line, a bunch of legal language I couldn't focus on. "I don't understand," I whispered. Jason's expression didn't change. "You don't add value anymore, Lena. This is business, not personal." My stomach dropped like I was falling from a great height. Our startup, our dream, was being taken from me in one meeting. One of the investors, a silver-haired man named Preston, who I'd never liked, cleared his throat. "Ms. Rivera, we appreciate your contributions in the early stages, but the company needs to pivot to more aggressive growth strategies. Mr. Keller has presented a vision that the board feels is more aligned with our goals." Jason leaned forward, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Contempt. "You're creative, sure," he said, almost dismissively. "But this company needs real leadership. Strategic thinking. You're great at the technical stuff, but when it comes to business decisions..." He trailed off with a shrug. I felt like I'd been slapped. "I built the core technology," I said, my voice shaking. "The AI logistics platform that every single one of our clients uses. I designed that. I wrote that code. You wouldn't even have this company without me." Jason smiled, actually smiled. "Exactly why I had to move on. You did your part. Now it's time for people who understand scaling and monetization to take over." The words hit me like physical blows. People who understand. As if I didn't. As if the countless all-nighters, the problem-solving, the innovation meant nothing because I wasn't good at schmoozing investors over expensive lunches. I looked down at the termination letter again, trying to make sense of the numbers. They were buying me out for a fraction of what my shares should be worth. "This can't be legal," I said. Preston spoke up. "I assure you, Ms. Rivera, everything has been reviewed by our legal team. You'll find the partnership agreement you signed allows for removal of a co-founder if the board determines it's in the company's best interest. Mr. Keller holds the controlling shares." My vision blurred. When had that happened? When had Jason maneuvered himself into a controlling position? "You have 48 hours to respond," Jason said, gathering his papers. "But I'd advise you to sign. Fighting this will only cost you money you don't have." I stood up, my legs shaking, and somehow made it to the door. Behind me, I heard one of the investors say something, and Jason laughed. Actually laughed. I walked through the office I'd helped design, past the desks where employees I'd hired were working, past the wall where our company mission statement hung, words I'd written. Nobody looked up. They already knew. Outside, it started to rain. Of course it did. Because apparently the universe had decided today was the day to destroy everything I'd worked for. I stood on the sidewalk, rain soaking through my blazer, clutching that termination letter and whispered to myself, "No talent, huh? We'll see about that." 2 years earlier, Jason and I had been 2 broke 20-somethings with a dream and no money. We'd worked out of my tiny studio apartment, surviving on instant ramen and coffee, coding until 2 a.m. most nights. The apartment had been barely big enough for 1 person, let alone 2 people and a startup. We'd used cardboard boxes as extra desk space. Our conference room was the futon. But we'd been happy. Or at least I had been. I designed the core feature of our app, an AI-powered logistics tool that could optimize delivery routes in real time, learning from traffic patterns and weather conditions to save companies millions in fuel and time costs. It was brilliant. Even Jason had admitted it. "This is going to change everything," he'd said, watching the first successful test run. "Lena, you're a genius." I'd blushed, proud of the work. "We're a good team," I'd replied. He'd kiss me then, and everything had felt perfect. Possible. Like we were building something together that mattered. But even then, there were signs. Small things I'd ignored because I'd been too in love, too excited, too naive. Like how he always presented the work as our accomplishment, but somehow his name always came first. How he'd answer technical questions in meetings as if he'd written the code himself. Our first real investor pitch had been 6 months into development. I'd been nervous, practicing my presentation for days. We'd agreed I'd handle the technical explanation while Jason covered the business model. But when we'd walked into that conference room, Jason had introduced me as our creative consultant. I'd stopped mid-step. "I'm your co-founder," I'd corrected, trying to keep my voice light. The investors had looked confused. Jason had smiled, that charming smile he used on everyone. "Of course, yes, co-founder. I just meant that Lena handles the creative and technical side while I focus on strategy and growth. It helps investors understand our roles more clearly." The meeting had gone well. We'd secured seed funding. But afterward, I'd confronted him in the parking lot. "Why did you introduce me that way?" He'd sighed, like I was being difficult. "Lena, investors want to know who's running the business. If we both claim to be in charge, it looks disorganized. This way, they know I'm the CEO and you're the technical genius. It works better." "But I am in charge," I'd said. "We're partners." "And we still are," he'd insisted, pulling me into a hug. "Don't overthink it. We got the funding, didn't we? That's what matters." I'd let it go. That was my first mistake. Over the next year, the pattern had continued. Jason started leaving me out of meetings with investors, saying they were just preliminary conversations or networking opportunities that didn't require technical input. When I'd confronted him, he'd been dismissive. "You're great at what you do, Lena, but you're just not business-minded. No offense, but watching you try to talk ROI and market penetration is painful. Let me handle the investor relations." "I can learn," I'd protested. "I'm not stupid." "I never said you were stupid," he'd replied, his tone patient like he was talking to a child. "You're brilliant at coding and problem solving. That's your strength. Why waste time trying to be something you're not?" So I'd focused on the technology, improving the algorithms, fixing bugs, developing new features. And I'd started documenting everything. Every line of code I wrote, every design decision, every contribution. I'd kept detailed notes of meetings, saved every email, backed up every file. Some instinct I couldn't name had told me to protect myself. Jason had grown more distant, spending long hours at the office even when there wasn't much to do, taking calls in private, meeting with investors and potential clients without me. "You're being paranoid," my best friend had said when I'd expressed concerns. Maybe I was. But paranoia and preparation look the same until you need the preparation. The final straw had come 3 months before that terrible boardroom meeting. I'd discovered, completely by accident, that Jason had sold a portion of my shares to new investors without my knowledge or consent. I'd found the paperwork on his desk while looking for a client file. At first, I'd thought it was a mistake. Then I'd read it more carefully. He'd used a loophole in our partnership agreement, one I hadn't noticed when we'd signed it 2 years earlier. A clause that gave the majority shareholder the right to restructure ownership for the benefit of company growth with board approval. Jason had maneuvered himself into majority shareholder status through a series of small investments over the previous year. And the board was him and 2 investors who were his friends. I'd confronted him that evening, shaking with rage. "You sold my shares. Without asking me. Without even telling me." He hadn't looked guilty. It was necessary for the next round of funding. The investors wanted certain terms. I did what was best for the company. "I'm part of this company. You're a part that was becoming a liability," he'd said coldly. That's when I knew. He'd been planning this for months. Maybe longer. My lawyer had been blunt. "Legally, there's not much you can do." He structured this carefully. "You could fight it in court, but it would take years and cost more than you have." Feeling hooked? Hit that subscribe button now because this story is about to take a turn you won't see coming. After that boardroom meeting, I'd moved out of the apartment Jason and I had shared and into a tiny studio in a less expensive part of the city. Most of our mutual friends had sided with him, or at least stayed neutral, which felt like the same thing. My savings, already depleted from the startup years, drained rapidly. Rent, food, the lawyer's consultation fees. I'd applied for jobs, but somehow word had gotten around. "We heard things didn't end well at Bitewave," one interviewer had said. "We're looking for someone more collaborative." I'd stopped eating regular meals, stopped going out, stopped doing much of anything except staring at my laptop screen, unable to make myself work on anything. The depression had been crushing. For 3 weeks, I couldn't even look at code without feeling sick. But one night, lying in bed at 2 a.m. and unable to sleep, I'd opened my laptop out of habit. And I'd found something. Old files from the early development days. The original prototype I'd built before Jason, and I had even officially formed the company. The code was still there, cleaner and more efficient than what was currently running Bitewave. Because I'd had to dumb it down to work with Jason's additions to accommodate his vision for the product. This version, my version, was better, faster, more powerful. And it was all mine. I'd started small, really small, freelancing under a pseudonym, LR Consulting, helping small businesses fix their tech problems. Nothing glamorous. Mostly database optimization, security patches, system integrations. But I'd been good at it. Really good. Within a month, I'd had more work than I could handle. Within 2 months, clients were referring other clients. One business owner had left me a review. "Whoever LR Consulting is, they're a genius. Fixed in 2 hours what 3 other consultants couldn't solve in a month." The work had been therapeutic. Each problem I solved felt like proof that Jason was wrong. I did have talent. I had more than talent. I had skills he'd never possessed and never would. I'd kept my identity secret, though. Something told me anonymity was powerful. Let the work speak for itself. No face, no drama, no backstory. Just results. I'd rebuilt my savings slowly. Nothing extravagant, but enough to feel stable again. Enough to sleep at night. Enough to start thinking about the future instead of just surviving the present. The depression had lifted gradually, replaced by something else. Determination. Focus. A quiet, burning need to prove that everything Jason had taken credit for was actually mine. 6 months after the termination, I'd gotten a call from an unknown number. "Is this Lena Rivera?" The voice was older, female, professional. "Who's asking?" "My name is Caroline Winters. I'm a venture capitalist. I'd like to meet with you." I'd almost hung up. The last thing I needed was some investor trying to recruit me for someone else's company. But something made me agree to coffee. Caroline had been in her late 50s, with sharp eyes and an even sharper business sense. She'd gotten straight to the point. "I know what Jason Keller did to you," she'd said. "I was one of the investors who passed on Bitewave Series A. Not because the technology wasn't good, it was excellent. But because I didn't trust him." I'd stared at her. "Then why are you here?" "Because I did trust you. I've been watching your consulting work. LR Consulting is you, isn't it?" My silence had confirmed it. "You built that platform," Caroline had continued. "The real innovation at Bitewave came from you. Jason's just a salesman writing your work. And I think you can build something better." "I don't have the money to start another company," I'd said. She'd smiled. "I have faith in you. And faith, properly invested, is worth more than money." That conversation had changed everything. Together, Caroline and I had started planning. Not just another startup, a strategic, carefully built company that would do what Bitewave did, but better. We'd operated in stealth mode for the first 4 months. No press releases, no flashy announcements. Just building, refining, perfecting. I'd named it Aurora, meaning new dawn. A fresh start. A second chance. But better than that, a chance to show what I could do without Jason holding me back, taking credit, watering down my vision to fit his limited understanding. The technology came together faster than I'd expected. Without Jason's interference, without having to explain every decision or compromise on features he didn't understand, I'd been able to build something truly revolutionary. Our AI didn't just optimize routes, it learned from them, predicted problems before they occurred, integrated with supply chain management in ways Bytewave never could. Caroline had connected me with other investors, people who actually understood technology, who asked smart questions and respected my expertise. We'd closed our first funding round at 3 times what Bytewave had gotten for their seed money. "You undersold yourself before," Caroline had told me. "You let Jason define your worth. Never again." Within 6 months of launching, Aurora had signed 3 major clients. Companies that had looked at Bytewave and passed. Because our tech was simply better. Jason didn't know yet. We'd kept everything quiet, operated under the radar. But he would find out eventually. And I wanted to be ready when he did. The first time I'd heard Bytewave mentioned after Aurora launched, it had been at a tech conference. I'd been in the bathroom, and 2 women at the sinks were talking. "Did you see Bytewave's demo yesterday? Their platform crashed twice. I heard they're losing clients. Something about reliability issues." I'd smiled at my reflection in the mirror. Of course they were having reliability issues. I'd written the core code, and while it was solid, it needed constant maintenance and updates. Jason had never understood the technical side deeply enough to keep it running smoothly. He'd hired developers, sure, but without someone who truly understood the architecture, they were just putting bandages on problems. Meanwhile, Aurora was thriving. We'd signed 2 more major clients, expanded our team to 12 people, and moved into real office space, nothing fancy, but professional. Investors were calling us now. We were turning down meetings because we were too busy actually building the company to spend all day pitching. It was everything Bytewave should have been. Everything I'd wanted it to be before Jason had taken over and made it about ego and control instead of innovation. But I'd stayed quiet. No interviews, no conference speeches, no social media presence. Caroline had advised patience. "You're playing a long game," she'd said. "When you finally make your move, it needs to be devastating." Then the rumors had started. Bytewave was in trouble. Real trouble. Their biggest client had left after a major system failure that cost them millions in delayed shipments. 2 more clients had followed. Their last funding round had fallen through. Jason was scrambling, making promises he couldn't keep, trying to patch problems with solutions that only created more problems. I'd known because the tech world was small and people talked. But I'd also known because Jason had called me. Once. "Lena," he'd said when I'd answered, surprised to hear his voice. I know things ended badly between us, but I'd hung up. I wasn't ready to talk to him. Wasn't ready to hear whatever justification or manipulation he'd prepared. Caroline had laughed when I'd told her. "He's desperate. Bytewave is circling the drain, and he knows it." "Good," I'd said. Then felt guilty for the satisfaction I'd felt. But only a little guilty. "There's something you should know," Caroline had said, her eyes gleaming. "I've heard through my network that Bytewave is looking for a buyer. They're drowning in debt and losing clients faster than they can replace them." My heart had started beating faster. "Who's interested in buying?" Caroline's smile had been predatory. "We are." I'd stared at her, barely breathing. I mean Aurora is going to acquire Bytewave. And you, my dear, are going to be the principal investor who makes it happen. The planning had taken 2 months. Caroline and I had worked with lawyers and financial advisors to structure the deal. I'd used the money I'd made from Aurora, combined with the investment consortium Caroline had put together, to position myself as the lead buyer. The terms were generous, more than Bytewave was worth in its current state. But Jason was desperate enough to consider anything. I'd insisted on staying anonymous during the negotiations. All correspondence went through Caroline and our lawyers. Jason had no idea who was behind the offer. "Why the secrecy?" one of our lawyers had asked. "Because," I'd explained, "I want to see his face when he realizes what's happening. I want him to walk into that meeting thinking he's being saved by some anonymous investor group. And then I want to watch his world collapse when he realizes it's me." Caroline had nodded approvingly. Revenge is a dish best served cold. But corporate revenge is best served with a legally binding contract and excellent legal counsel. We'd set the meeting for a Thursday afternoon. 2 o'clock, in a conference room at a downtown law office. Neutral territory. Professional. Perfect. I'd bought a new suit for the occasion. Navy blue, perfectly tailored, expensive. The kind of power suit Jason had always said made women look like they were trying too hard. I'd paired it with heels that added 3 inches to my height and made a satisfying click when I walked. I wanted to look successful, powerful, untouchable. The night before the meeting, I'd barely slept. Not from nerves, from anticipation. 2 years of work, of rebuilding myself from nothing, of proving every single person who doubted me wrong. All of it was coming to this moment. Caroline had called me at midnight. "Are you awake?" "Can't sleep," I'd admitted. "Having second thoughts?" "None," I'd said immediately. "Good. Because tomorrow isn't just about revenge, Lena. It's about justice. It's about showing every woman who's been pushed out, talked over, or had her work stolen that we don't have to accept it. We can fight back. We can win." "Did you ever have someone do this to you?" I'd asked. She'd been quiet for a moment. "Once. A long time ago. I didn't have the resources to fight back then. So now I help women who do. Consider tomorrow my revenge by proxy." We'd laughed, and I'd finally fallen asleep around 2 a.m. When I'd woken up, the sun was shining. A good sign, I'd decided. I'd gotten ready carefully, taking my time with makeup and hair. Professional, but not overdone. I wanted Jason to see success, not effort. Caroline had picked me up at 1:30. We'd driven to the law office in silence, both of us focused on what was coming. "Remember," she'd said as we'd pulled into the parking garage, "let me handle the introduction. You just walk in like you own the place. Because after today, you basically will." 3 days before the meeting, Jason had emailed me. I'd been surprised to see his name in my inbox. We hadn't communicated in over a year. The subject line had read, "Water under the bridge?" I'd almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity had won. "Lena," the email had begun. "I know you're probably still bitter about how things ended between us. I get it. But business is business, and I think we're both mature enough to see past our personal history. I've heard through the grapevine that you're doing consulting work now. Good for you. Really. You always were talented at the technical stuff. I'm reaching out because Bytewave is at a crossroads, and I think there might be opportunities for collaboration. We could use someone with your skill set on a contract basis. Maybe it's time we both moved past what happened and focused on the future. What do you say? Coffee sometime soon?" I'd read it 3 times, my anger building with each pass. The casual dismissal of how he'd destroyed my life, still bitter, like I was being unreasonable. The backhanded compliment, talented at the technical stuff, as if that was all I was. Jason's lawyer was paging through documents rapidly, trying to find something. Jason himself had collapsed back into his chair, his face cycling through expressions, shock, confusion, disbelief, and finally, creeping horror. "This is a joke," he said finally. "Some kind of revenge fantasy. Lena doesn't have the money to acquire your failing company." I finished for him, pulling out my chair and sitting down gracefully. "Actually, I do. Would you like to see the financials?" I slid a folder across the table, the same gesture he'd used when he'd terminated me 2 years ago. Inside was the official buyout proposal. Numbers, terms, conditions. All of it legitimate, verified by lawyers and accountants. Jason's lawyer grabbed it and started reading, his eyes getting wider with each page. This is a serious offer," he said, sounding stunned. "It's above market value for your current assets." "Of course it is," I said. "I'm not trying to steal the company. I'm trying to acquire it legally and fairly. Unlike some people." Jason's face had gone red now. "You can't be serious. You don't have this kind of money. 2 years ago, you were broke. Living in a studio apartment. Doing freelance work." 2 years is a long time, I said calmly. Long enough to build a company from the ground up. To sign major clients. To secure serious funding from investors who actually respected my work. I pulled out another document. "These are Aurora's financials for the past 18 months. Revenue, growth projections, client contracts. All the things you said I couldn't understand because I wasn't business-minded." Caroline added, "For context, gentlemen, Aurora Technologies currently has 3 times the annual revenue of Bytewave, with a quarter of the operating costs. Ms. Rivera has built something remarkable." "With the investors who turned us down," Jason said bitterly, finally finding his voice. With the clients we lost. You stole from us. I leaned forward, my voice steel. I stole nothing. I built something new. Better. Without you holding me back. One of the board members, Preston, the silver-haired man who'd been at my termination, cleared his throat. This is unexpected. But if the offer is genuine, we need to consider it seriously. Bytewave's current situation is not sustainable. Jason slammed his hand on the table. No. No way. I'm not selling to her. This is personal. She's doing this to humiliate me. Actually, I said calmly, I'm doing this because Bytewave is failing due to technical problems that I can fix. The AI platform is degrading because nobody there understands the core architecture well enough to maintain it. Under Aurora's management, with proper technical leadership, it could be profitable again. His lawyer leaned over and whispered something to him. Jason's face went from red to white. What? He hissed. The lawyer whispered again, pointing at the contract. That can't be legal. It's completely legal, Caroline confirmed. We've had this reviewed by 3 separate law firms. This is a legitimate acquisition offer at a fair price. Your board has a fiduciary duty to consider it, especially given Bytewave's current financial situation. I watched Jason process this, watched him realize that he was trapped. His company was dying, his reputation in tatters, and the only person offering to save him was the woman he'd thrown away. You planned this, he said, his voice hollow. You've been planning this the whole time. I smiled faintly. No, Jason. You planned this. When you kicked me out. When you told me I had no talent. When you sold my shares and destroyed what we built together. You set this in motion. I just built something better from the ashes. The meeting went for 2 more hours. Jason's lawyer tried to find loopholes, tried to negotiate different terms, tried everything he could to give Jason a way out. But the math was simple. Bytewave was worth less every day, losing clients and bleeding money. Aurora's offer was generous, would pay off their debts, and would keep the company alive. The board voted 3-1 to accept. Only Jason voted against it. This is a mistake, he said as he signed the preliminary agreement, his hand shaking. You'll run this into the ground just like what? I interrupted. Just like you were already doing? Bytewave's stock price has dropped 60% in the last 6 months. You've lost half your clients. Your last 3 product updates were disasters. What exactly do you think I'm going to make worse? He didn't have an answer for that. As the lawyers finalized the paperwork, I stood and gathered my things. Caroline squeezed my shoulder proudly. At the door, I paused and turned back. Jason was still sitting at the table, staring at the contract like it was a death warrant. For what it's worth, I said, I didn't come here for revenge. I came here because Bytewave's technology has real potential. The AI platform I built is solid. It just needs someone who understands it to fix it. I paused. You were right about one thing. This is business, not personal. And in business, the best product wins. Then I walked out, Caroline beside me, leaving Jason sitting alone with the ruins of his hubris. 2 weeks after the acquisition closed, Jason showed up at Aurora's offices. The receptionist called my desk, her voice uncertain. Ms. Rivera? There's a Jason Keller here. He says he needs to talk to you. I almost said no. Almost had security escort him out. But curiosity won. Send him up. He looked worse than at the meeting. Unshaven, wearing jeans and a hoodie instead of his usual expensive suits. He'd lost weight, and not in a healthy way. What do you want, Jason? I asked, not inviting him to sit. I need to talk to you, he said. About what happened. About everything. We don't have anything to talk about. Please, Lena. Just 5 minutes. I sighed and gestured to the chair across from my desk. He sat down, looking around the office, tastefully decorated, with awards and photos from company events on the walls. Nice place, he said. You've done well. I worked hard, I replied. Unlike some people who just coasted on others' talent. He flinched. That's fair. I deserve that. He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I remembered from when we'd been together. I can't just erase what I did, can I? You've won. You've proven me wrong in every way possible. Is that enough? I leaned back in my chair, studying him. This isn't about winning, Jason. It never was. Then what is it about? He asked, his voice bitter. Revenge? Humiliation? Making me pay for what I did to you? No, I said quietly. It's about building something that matters. Creating a company with integrity. Treating people with respect. All the things you never understood. He stared at me. I loved you, you know. That was real. I felt a pang of something, not love, not anymore, but a ghost of what I'd once felt. No, Jason. You loved what I could do for you. You loved having someone talented enough to build your dreams, but insecure enough to let you take credit. The moment I started questioning that dynamic, you got rid of me. That's not true. It is true, I interrupted firmly. You didn't love me. You loved control. And now you don't have any. He stood up, anger flashing across his face. You can't just erase me from Bytewave's history. I was part of building that company. You were, I agreed. And nobody's trying to erase you. The press releases mention you as co-founder. Your name is still in the company records. But your role is going to be accurately represented now. Not inflated. Not built on lies. I stood up too, walking to the door. Here's what's going to happen, Jason. Aurora is going to fix Bytewave's technical problems. We're going to rebuild the client base. And we're going to do it by focusing on quality and innovation instead of ego and salesmanship. I opened the door. You're welcome to watch from the sidelines. But your time at the center of this story is over. He left without another word. I watched him walk to the elevators, shoulders slumped, and felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not anger, not even pity. Just a sense of closure. The chapter was finally finished. Over the next few months, Aurora integrated Bytewave's technology with our own. The combined platform was better than either had been separately. We rehired some of Bytewave's staff, the talented ones who'd been stifled under Jason's leadership, and they thrived. One of them, a developer named Marcus, told me, working for Jason was like having your wings clipped every day. He wanted us to follow his vision, even when we knew better ways to do things. This is what I'd hoped it would be. That meant more to me than any headline or award. We created something good. Something that worked. Something sustainable. Caroline came by my office one evening, holding 2 glasses of wine. Celebrating? I asked. Reflecting, she said, handing me a glass. 2 years ago, you were at rock bottom. Now look at you. CEO of a thriving company, industry respect, financial security. How does it feel? I thought about it. Honestly, it feels like coming home. Like I finally found the place where I was supposed to be all along. She smiled. You know what the best part is? You didn't become Jason to beat him. You stayed yourself. That's the real victory. Thank you so much for watching. If you've ever been underestimated, pushed aside, or had someone take credit for your hard work, this one's for you. Please subscribe and share this with anyone who needs a reminder that comebacks are real, that talent always finds a way, and that the best revenge is building something so undeniably excellent that the truth speaks for itself. Your support means everything and helps me create more empowering stories like this. Remember, they can steal your ideas, but they can never steal your ability to create new ones. Keep building. Keep fighting. Keep proving them wrong. Until next time.